Hi, welcome to this session on becoming more sustainable within our food systems and networks. This session will hopefully help you to understand how you can become more sustainable in your practices, resource use, as well as in your food systems. The hints, tips and advice will not be unique to just your setting, but there may also be ways you can become more sustainable in your personal life, as well as invoking behaviour changes with the families you come into contact with and the locations you operate from. So first, let's take a look at food sustainability. We're going to divide this into three different sections. Food waste or wasted food, so looking at the difference and the impact this has, as well as ways to reduce it. Growing your own, this is the ultimate sustainable, seasonal, local food source. And food miles, where does our food actually come from? And could we buy more locally and make better sustainable choices with regards to maybe seasonality as well? So food waste or wasted food. So often these are bunched together. Is there a difference? Well, yes, there is. Food waste is the parts of the food that we can't eat, such as shells or bones, skins, peelings, that kind of thing. Whereas wasted food is the food that could have been eaten, but was thrown away. So in the UK, we throw away 30.8% of all food purchased. Now, this is only in UK households. So this is just domestic wasted food. This doesn't account for supermarkets, restaurants, schools, or any other kind of setting. 6.5 million tonnes of food is wasted by our UK households every year. And that equates to 4.5 million tonnes of which is edible. So this is food that could have been eaten. So it's where we've maybe pre-prepared too much food that can't be eaten all in one go, or where we've made sandwiches and the crusts are cut off. So crusts are totally edible. So that's included in there. That would make a difference to the average family household of around £728 per year. Now, that's not to be sniffed at, especially as we are going through a cost of living crisis and food prices are quite high because of inflation. We can't really afford to be throwing good edible food away. And we know that you come into contact with lots of families that struggle to put food on the table. So we need to make a difference. We've created some activities that can be used to support this area, both in your setting and for children to take away and do at home. So one of our challenges is to look at what food is being produced and what else we could do with that if there was some left over, or if we could do something with food that we haven't cooked yet. So we could save for later, we could share with others, we can freeze foods. And there's probably lots and lots of other things that we can do as well. So this is an activity that you could do in your setting using the food that you're serving. So if the children weren't able to eat everything that you've prepared, what else could be done with that food instead? Make it a real life scenario, or you can just use the examples here on the card. This kind of wasted food is really closely linked to things like portion sizes. And so again, getting children to understand what portion size is right for them is also another way of reducing this down. All these resources can be accessed off the link at the bottom of these slides through the Healthy Schools website, along with all of our other HAF resources, which we might reference. So there is one for portion sizes on there as well. We've also created a food waste diary. So this can be used in your setting. So you can maybe monitor what food is going in the bin and ask the young people why, so that you can combat that and reduce down your costs, but also reduce down that wasted food, which has an environmental impact. Or you can ask them to take this home and have those conversations with their parents or whoever's at home to see if they can have a positive impact on the food that they are consuming, and maybe reducing down costs and waste there as well. So then we're coming on to growing your own food. So this is the ultimate sustainable way of making sure that when we grow food, it's local because it's grown in often our own gardens or on a windowsill box or within your setting. And it's obviously going to be seasonal. We're not going to be able to grow things unless we've got greenhouses in times of the year that they're not meant to grow in. So some shop bought produce has lost as much as a third of its nutritional value. So, for example, a bag of spinach has lost 80% of its vitamin C content that's listed on the packet. We don't use chemicals, pesticides, herbicides when we grow our own at home. And actually 40 years ago, potato crops were sprayed with around 5 different chemicals compared to around 30 today. So that's a massive increase in those chemical usage. And it can reduce the cost of fresh food. So we know fresh food costs a lot more than processed food. If we're growing our own, it's a simple cost of a packet of seeds. And often we can harvest those seeds from food that maybe has been left to go off, or are seeds that we don't eat anyway, like the seeds in the middle of bell peppers, for example, sakes. There's 123 different chemicals that have been found on our fruit and veg that are provided to schools. This information's come from the Department of Health. So we know that there's a massive problem with our food networks and our food securities. Now that's come about through lots of different things. Our soils are depleting in a rate of knots because we're building on land, but also those soils are becoming less useful for food growth because of soil erosion, and the vitamins and things that are needed within the soil to grow food are also reducing. So we need to make sure that we are using the food that is being produced as much as possible. Research has shown that if we grow our own food, it's less likely that we're going to waste it because we're the ones that have invested that time and energy into growing it, which means we're more connected to it. So therefore, we are actually going to eat more of it. So just to give you an example of cost differences, you can buy a packet of tomato seeds for around £2. You can get them free for an old tomato, like we've just said. But if you were to go into the store and buy the same kind of yield, so we'd expect around 6 kilograms per plant, a supermarket would charge you £3.20 per kilogram. So that would be a total savings of around £19. So that really does help to put it in perspective when it comes to thinking about the cost of our food as well as where it comes from. So children don't often understand where our food comes from, how it's grown or how it's sourced. So if you're using fresh and raw ingredients within your setting, ask them where they think it comes from. Does it come from underground? Does it come from trees? Does it come from plants or above ground? Or does it come from animals? And I think you'll be really surprised at their lack of knowledge in this space. So it's a really good idea to look at this and then maybe think, okay, so strawberries come off plants above the ground, but can I get those in December if I grow them myself? Or can I only get those in summer? And if that's my favourite fruit, what other kinds of fruits are there that are around in the winter season or in the autumn season? And so getting them to make those connections between the different concepts of how our food grows and where it grows. And we can also grow food from lots of different sources. So this is a way of growing from food waste. So this is the stuff that we wouldn't normally eat. We would chop off and throw away. We can actually regrow it on a windowsill in some water and then transfer and plant it outside in some soil to regrow itself. So we've created a guide to help and support schools in this area. The other thing is composting. So composting is a really great way to reduce down the amount of food that goes off to landfill, but also is useful if you are growing your own. And you don't have to have a massive amount of space to do composting. You can do it in a plastic tub, as is shown here. So this is really useful if you're limited on space, but also if you don't own your own space. It's something that maybe you could start at home and then bring along to your HAF sessions, or get the children to start off and then take it away with you at the end when you've finished. So it's a really practical way of getting young people and adults alike involved in composting, which otherwise can be quite confusing. So food miles is the other thing that we want to look at within our food sustainability network. So local and seasonal food, as we've learned, is definitely the way to go. Local is deemed anything that's within 100 to 150 miles. So that's quite a big distance around England. Obviously, if you're in a bigger country like America, then that wouldn't be so far. But we can pretty much get a lot of food from within that distance from where we are here in the east. When food is not sourced locally, it's either grown in a hothouse or shipped in from other parts of the world. And it's estimated that the average fast food item on our dinner table travels 1,500 miles to get there. So that's come a long way around the world. That might be from where it's grown to a packaging department, from a packaging department to a process department, from a process department to a warehouse, and then distributed to the shop, and then finally from the shop to our homes or our locations where it will be consumed. Out of season crops need to be transported and harvested early and refrigerated for long periods of time. So this is to aid in that transportation process, where obviously they're not going to be consumed straight away. Consequently, produce may not ripen as effectively as it would in its natural environment, and some level of flavour and moisture and that nutritional value is lost as a result. But because of that refrigeration that needs to take place, it also contributes an additional 10% to our carbon emission each year. And did you know that over 95% of our fruit and 50% of our vegetables actually come from abroad? So that's when we think about what we consume, that's quite a massive amount of food that doesn't come from the UK. So we're challenging young people to have a look at where their food comes from. So in this activity, we are challenging them to look at packaging, to look at where that food's come from, and then to have a look, could I have grown that within my garden? Could I have sourced that from the UK? Could I have sourced it from Europe? So making sure we're reducing down that mileage as much as possible, and that includes eating seasonally. And then we can look at swaps. So I love strawberries. They can be grown in the UK, which is local, and seasonal if I'm only eating them in the summer. But if I want strawberries with my Christmas dinner, they're likely to have been shipped in around the world. And so therefore, what could I have as an alternative to strawberries at that time of the year? Well, I could have gone out in autumn and picked blackberries. They're very local and seasonal, and then I could have frozen them, and then I could have got them out at Christmas. So that's a really easy way of explaining how we could make a positive swap to be more sustainable in our food networks. So we've also created a food sustainability poster with 10 ways to maybe think about that or be able to put that into practice. It's a really good reminder to have up and about in your setting. It goes over some of the things that I've already spoken about within this session, but we've also got additional links in here for you as well. So the Food Miles link here allows you to look at where food comes from and how long it takes to get to you. So how far it's come, sorry. So this is the website, and we can look at the United Kingdom, that's where we are. We can have a look at the packaging and see where our food has come from. So we could put in Argentina, we can put in the item, and we can submit, and it will tell us how far that's travelled. So it goes from capital to capital, so it's not 100%, but it gives a really good visualization for young people and children to be able to have a go and look, and then kind of maybe think about, well, if I bought them from Spain, how many miles would that save? So it tells you approximately how many miles that has travelled. Again, that only takes you to the capital, London. So we would have to factor in that transport from there to the east area, and then from the supermarket to our homes. But it also tells us how much carbon it creates as well. So then if I change this to, let's see if I can put that in Spain. And I did the same again, and I submitted that. Okay, then it's going to tell me how many miles it is, which is a lot less than it was previously. And then it's also going to tell me the distance in a carbon footprint as well. So it's a really good visualization of how our food miles work. We've also got a link here to the Big Barn Discover Local Food. So this is a really good link. It's a link to show us where we can get local food from. So let's have a look at this one. Apologies. So if I put in our office postcode here, so you just put your postcode in and we can go to the map, and then on the map it will show me what local stores we've got near us. So whether that's farm shops, whether that's community fridges, whether that's refill shops, lots and lots of different places. And so you can move around. If you click on something, it will bring it up. It gives you the address details, what kinds of foods they sell as well. So that's a really, really good link if you want to look at what's sustainable around you. So number 3, we haven't touched on in the resources for you to use, but correct storage of food really can make a difference. So that can include keeping strawberries in a jar instead of in an open punnet as they are brought. It could be placing things like celery and carrots in water, so that keeps them fresher for longer. And there's lots and lots of different ways of looking at correct storage. So if you Google that, that will come up with lots of different things. And Revive Fresh Food from Love Food, Hate Waste also looks at that correct storage, which might challenge some of the norms and some of the things we've been doing for a long time. Grow your own, we've obviously spoken about, but you can go to your local cafe and ask for their used coffee grains. They're really, really good for aiding plant health and growth. So if you use those in your gardening projects, then you will see a noticeable difference. And there are plenty of websites that look at growing your own fruit and vegetables and herbs and giving you help and advice. So I am not very green-fingered. I try as much as I can to grow my own food, but I'm not an expert. So this is really helpful to give me helpful hints and tips, especially around the changing seasons and weather that we might incur as well. You can go for wonky. Once it's cut up and it's put in a lasagna or it's put in a soup, you're not going to see that it's wonky. Often that's really a lot cheaper. But also that's making sure that that veg doesn't go in the bin. So this might be veg that would otherwise be discounted by supermarkets, left behind, and not used at all. So it's really good to start seeing those in wonky veg boxes or bags and using those rather than making sure everything was perfect, because we know that everything is not. So checking the label. Often sell by, use by and best before dates get really confusing, and there's been a lot of work done on this recently where people haven't really totally understood. So because they don't understand those different labels, they just go by the date, and if it's a date that's passed or the date is today, then they throw that food away, and actually that's not always needed. So making sure that we advise people on the right usage and terminology of sell by, use by and best before dates means that not only are we meeting health and safety requirements in terms of food, but we are also reducing down food that could be eaten and used from going in the bin because people think it can't be. There are now new schemes called Too Good to Go. So hopefully you've heard of these. You can register for them for free on an app. And at the end of the day, if there's a bakery local to you and they've got stuff left, then they will put that on there for people to be able to access. It's very hit and miss. It does depend on the day what you're going to get. It does depend on your area. But again, it's another way of getting cheaper goods and saving them from going into landfill. Finally, going back to that compost point, if you don't want to create your own compost, you can access free compost. So the the Water Beach Recycling Centre is where all of our garden waste goes. And so they filter that, they sieve it all through, they take out all the weeds and all the stuff that's not good for that soil. They create compost and then it all gets piled up outside the front. And so anyone from the community can go. You've got to take your own bags. You can go and fill them up and take them back with you, and you can use them for your settings. So really good if you're going to be doing any growing. And then finally, refill shops. Refill shops are amazing. So not only are we looking at food in a different way, but we're reducing down that single-use plastic, all that packaging that comes with our food networks as well. So there is a list on these links for both South Cambridgeshire and Cambridge area for local refill shops that you can go and visit. So that's everything to take you through today. There's quite a lot in there. Take some time to have a look at those links, explore what's available, think about your own practices and what you might like to include as part of your HAF provisions. There is an additional link on here that is on the screen at the moment. So we've got a Healthy Families page on the Healthy Schools website. This is where lots of activities that are going on in different areas across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are listed. They're often free activities. They're linked to either physical activity or food and nutrition for families to go along and get involved with. So you might like to take a look there and see if there's anything you'd like to signpost any of the families that you're working with too. And then there's also the Simply Veg link there. So Simply Veg is a resource for parents to try and get more children to eat more vegetables at home. It's brought to you by the same people who have brought together the Eat Them to Defeat Them campaign, which you might have seen advertised on ITV. It's a really, really good resource with lots of ideas and recipes that you can direct your families to, and there might be some that you might want to use in setting as well. So I hope that's been useful, and I look forward to seeing you next time.